Letting go of an obsession that forces you to grovel in the dirt is not a defeat to regret. It is the act of reclaiming the self-respect you deserve. I hope that once you see through the illusion of a misplaced love, you find the strength to walk away from the wrong door and embrace the person who truly sees only you. My wife, Sarah Miller, had always been cold and distant toward me. Throughout our 10 years of marriage, she never once told me that she loved me. Right before I died, I stumbled upon a love letter she had kept hidden for years. To my heartbreak, the letter was addressed to someone else. It turned out she simply never cared about me at all. The very first thing I did after being reborn was to call off our engagement and personally deliver that letter for her. Her face turned bright red with rage, and for the first time in her life, she screamed at me. "Morrison Harrison, who gave you the right to meddle in my private life?" An hour before the elevator plummeted, I was cleaning out the attic and found a yellowed love letter. I recognized the handwriting and the signature instantly, but the name at the top of the page was not mine. It was a love letter Sarah had written to another man named Henry Davis. As the elevator went into a free fall, my mind was racing. I had not even discovered who he was, what he looked like, or if he was a much better man than I could ever be. When I opened my eyes again, the California sun was streaming through the window. My head felt like it was filled with fog as my brother, Leo Harrison, let out a long sigh beside me. "You're finally awake, man. You scared the hell out of me just now," he said. Luckily, someone nearby had quick reflexes and carried you straight to the school nurse. Seeing this teenager in a high school jersey made me feel completely disoriented. This was Leo at 17 years old. The warmth in my palms told me this was not some hallucination. I had actually been given a second chance at life. I heard the sound of hurried footsteps as a figure blurred past the doorway and stopped right in front of me. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked, looking down at me with her usual cold indifference while holding a sandwich and a carton of milk. Memories flooded back to me in an instant. I remembered this day perfectly. I had overslept and skipped breakfast, which caused me to pass out from low blood sugar during the morning assembly. Sarah shoved the food into my hands and watched silently as I ate it. That morning, her class had a physics quiz, but she missed it because of me, which led to her getting a brutal lecture from her teacher later on. At 17, I was delusional enough to believe she cared about me. Looking back now, with the perspective of a 32-year-old, I finally understand that her only motivation was a promise she made to her father. Sarah's father and my dad had been brothers in arms in the military. Where her father was killed in action, her mother took the insurance money and skipped town to marry someone else. Seeing her left with nothing, my father took her in and raised her as one of our own. Since she was living under our roof, she treated my father's word as law and never dared to talk back. From that point forward, Sarah became my constant shadow at school. Everyone at school whispered about us, joking that I had a submissive little bride in training. Once my father noticed my obvious crush on her, he started teasing her constantly, telling everyone she was going to be his future daughter-in-law. She never once tried to correct him. Back then, I convinced myself she was just being shy, but now I realize how incredibly stupid I was to believe that. I could hardly pay attention in class because my mind was stuck on a loop of my past life. In this new life, I decided I would no longer be a burden to Sarah Miller. Maybe if I just don't marry her, she can actually be happy. And maybe, just maybe, I can avoid the miserable death that waited for me at 32. My last period teacher kept us 10 minutes over the bell. When he finally let us go, the rest of the kids practically stampeded out of the room. By the time I finished packing my bag, I saw Sarah leaning against the doorframe, clearly having waited for quite some time. Her head was down, and she was focused on a notebook of practice problems. The hallway lights hit her in a way that made her look even more detached and unapproachable. We walked out of the building together without saying a single word. Sarah had always been that way, cold and aloof, as if nothing in the world could ever truly interest her. Watching her walk a few paces ahead of me, I abruptly came to a halt. "Sarah, just go home without me," I said. "You don't have to walk with me from now on. You don't have to wait for me ever again." "Why?" she asked, sounding confused. "No reason," I replied. "You are free now, Sarah." I turned and headed toward the shops behind the school, intending to buy some workbooks to fix my terrible math grades. I heard someone running up behind me, and then her cold voice cut through the air. "Morrison, what is your problem this time?" she demanded. "Is it because I was late this morning? Or do you just hate the milk I bought for you?" "That was the only flavor the convenience store had left," she added. The moonlight made her look incredibly pale and lonely standing there. Her expression clearly signaled that she thought I was just throwing another tantrum. I tried to stay calm as I explained. "It really has nothing to do with that. The SATs are coming up soon," I said. "Everyone's time is valuable right now. You don't need to waste yours on me. I need to start taking my own life seriously," I finished. Sarah just stood there, paralyzed. It was likely the first time she had ever heard me speak with such resolve. In my past life, I was obsessed with being around her. I didn't have the grades for Harvard, but Sarah did. Yet, in the end, she chose to stay in our hometown anyway. She did it all because of one thing my father said. Back then, I was pathetic enough to believe she stayed for me, thinking she was just too shy to say she loved me. She must have been miserable, considering Harvard was the only school she ever wanted to attend. This time, however, she didn't follow me. I walked into the bookstore and picked out some SAT prep books and a writing guide. When I reached the counter, I realized my wallet was missing. I paced around the store, feeling totally lost, but I couldn't find my cash anywhere. I had no idea if I had been pickpocketed or if it had just slipped out of my pocket. I sighed and decided to come back tomorrow. As I turned to leave, I slammed right into someone. "Watch out," she cried. Her manga hit the floor, and she scrambled to keep her bowl of barbecue from spilling everywhere. "Sorry about that," I said, but then I stopped. "Wait, you again." I recognized that voice immediately and took a good look at her. It was Lizzie Sullivan, my best friend from my college years. I couldn't believe I was running into her this early in my new life. "I'm the one who helped carry you to the nurse this morning," she said. "Are you feeling better now?" "Oh yeah, I'm fine," I stammered. "Thank you so much." It finally clicked. I had no idea she had been the one to save me in my first life. It was a detail I had completely missed the first time around. Lizzie picked up her book and saw me standing there looking embarrassed. Without asking, she grabbed my workbooks and paid for them along with her own. "I saw you wandering around like a lost puppy," she teased. "Were you looking for something? Did you lose your wallet?" I nodded sheepishly. This girl really was born to be a detective. Her powers of observation were already incredible. I promised to pay her back the next day, but Lizzie just waved me off. "Just buy me lunch tomorrow, and we're even," she said. We walked out onto the street. It was getting late, and the sidewalks were mostly empty except for a few students heading home. I saw a group of shady-looking guys smoking on the corner and decided I couldn't let her walk alone. I went to the bike rack and pulled out my black motorcycle. When we pulled up to her apartment, I killed the engine. She was terrified her neighbors would throw water on us for the noise, so she whispered for me to be quiet when I left. I let out a soft laugh. "I can't help a noise," I joked. "This beast is way too much kick." I realized a second later how suggestive that sounded. When I got back to the complex, I was surprised to see Sarah at the gate. I was confused. I told her to go home an hour ago, so how was she still behind me? We walked to the elevator in a suffocating silence. Just as the doors slid shut, she finally spoke. "Are you working this hard just to impress that girl?" she asked. "No," I replied flatly. "We just ran into each other. It was a coincidence." Her voice remained flat, as if she didn't actually care about the answer. I didn't feel like explaining myself further anyway. Once we were inside, Sarah did her homework before heading to the shower. While she was occupied in the bathroom, I slipped into her room and found the love letter. She was a creature of habit, so the letter was exactly where I expected it to be, tucked under a pile of books. I opened it and read the name Henry again, but I couldn't recall anyone in our grade with that name. Maybe he was in one of her advanced classes. Given how icy she was to everyone, it was a miracle she even liked someone. I decided I should probably help her out. I walked into school the next morning with dark circles under my eyes. I had spent the whole night looking through the student directory, but there weren't even any guys named Henry in her classes. I was completely lost during math class. Even with a second chance at life, these equations remained a foreign language to me. It seemed the intellectual gap between Sarah and me was just as wide as ever. I was about to head to lunch with Leesery when I saw Sarah waiting for me by the door. She was holding a bag of barbecue wings from my favorite spot. "I told you that you don't have to wait for me anymore," I said. "Go do your own thing." "Okay," she replied, handing me the bag. "Thanks, but you don't need to buy me food anymore either," I added. Sarah looked at me with a bewildered expression and let out a soft sigh. "Morrison, did I do something to upset you?" she asked. "You've been avoiding me lately." "It's not you, it's me," I replied. "I've just realized a few things, that's all." I started walking toward the cafeteria, but then I stopped and turned back to her with a serious look. "By the way, all that talk from my dad about us getting married is just nonsense. You don't have to take it seriously. You don't have to be so obedient to him, Sarah. Just focus on your SATs and get into the college of your dreams." Sarah's brow furrowed, looking like she couldn't wrap her head around what I was saying. By the time I made it to the cafeteria, Leesery had already snagged us a table. "What's in the bag?" Leesery asked. "Barbecue wings. They're for you, as a thanks for helping me out yesterday." "Hey, you didn't have to do that," Leesery said, though she was already reaching into the bag. The smell was too good to resist, and she was soon happily devouring a wing. She was totally focused on her food, eating with genuine enthusiasm. I was about to say something when a familiar, icy voice interrupted us. "No wonder you were in such a hurry to get away from me," Sarah said, standing over us. "Are you two dating?" Leesery nearly choked on her food. I turned to meet Sarah's cold stare and felt a weird pang of guilt, as if I had been caught cheating. Then I reminded myself that in this life, we weren't even a couple. Leesery could feel the tension and quickly made an excuse to go buy a drink. "It's not like that," I told Sarah. "I just met her. We're just classmates." I was telling the truth, but Sarah cut me off with an impatient wave. "You don't need to explain yourself. I'm not going to tell your father, so stop avoiding me." She threw the words at me like ice and walked away, looking uncharacteristically annoyed. When Leesery came back, she leaned in and whispered, "Who was that?" From the look on her face, I could tell she thought Sarah and I were a thing. I gave her the short version of our history, and she gave me a knowing grin. "Oh, so she's the childhood sweetheart," Leesery teased. "She seemed pretty jealous to me." "Trust me, she isn't. Sarah would be thrilled to get rid of me," I replied. After school on Friday, Leo insisted on trying the new menu items at the barbecue shack across from campus. The place had been around forever and was always packed with students. It was the same place where Sarah always bought those wings for me. Leo went ahead and ordered 2 of their signature platters. While we waited, I overheard a waiter telling the owner they were out of stock. He called them Mr. Henry Davis. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a kid in a school hoodie slip into the kitchen. He was the owner's son, and his name was Henry Davis. I remembered seeing his name on the list for the regional essay competition. He was a straight-A student, always ranked in the top 50 of our entire grade. It made total sense. He was involved in all the same academic clubs as Sarah, so they definitely knew each other. No wonder Sarah was always so eager to buy me barbecue. It was just an excuse for her to come here and see the guy she actually liked. She was always in a great mood after bringing me food, and I had been pathetic enough to think it was because of me. I felt a surge of bitterness, but I forced it down. I needed to be sure he was the Henry from the letter, so I walked up to him when he came back out of the kitchen. "Hey, Henry, right? I'm a friend of Sarah Miller's," I said. "She thought she left something here." "Oh, really?" he asked, looking surprised. Henry didn't seem suspicious at all as he checked his bag. "She was just here helping me with some math problems," he said. "She even lent me her notebook, but I don't see anything else of hers." So they really were close. I saw the orange notebook in his bag. I was the one who had bought that for Sarah last semester. I used to ask her for help with math all the time, but she was always so short with me. I eventually stopped asking because she made me feel like an idiot for not understanding. "I must have gotten it mixed up," I said with a fake smile. "I'll let her know." Leo was thrilled with his food as we walked away, but I had completely lost my appetite. It turns out that when your heart is heavy, even your favorite food tastes like ash. "Why aren't you eating?" Leo asked, nudging me. "And what were you talking to Henry about back there?" "Nothing important." "How do you even know his name?" I asked. Leo looked around and lowered his voice. My friends told me he's the owner's adopted son. It's kind of a well-known story around here. Got it. Now that I knew for sure who the letter was for, a weight finally lifted off my chest. I wondered what kind of hope Sarah felt when she was writing those words. In that moment, I was genuinely jealous of Henry Davis. I remember junior year, when I finally worked up the nerve to tell her I loved her. Her only response was a cold, "Okay, I got it." She sounded so detached, as if my heart was just an inconvenience to her. That night, I was studying for the SAT when my phone buzzed with a message from Lizuri. Lizuri, my mom put together these math practice sheets. You should try them. If you get stuck, just ask me. Her mom was a professional math tutor, so this was a huge help for me. I sent her a quick thank you and a stupid meme. Suddenly, my door flew open without a knock. Sarah marched in, her expression thunderous. "Did you go through my room?" she demanded. She didn't say what she was looking for, but I already knew. Feeling a bit guilty, I pulled the letter out of my desk drawer. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked. I had actually wanted to help her, but I didn't think she'd catch me so soon." She snatched the letter back, her face pale with either embarrassment or anger. My heart felt like lead, but I forced myself to speak. "I know who that letter is for. It's for Henry from the barbecue shack, isn't it? If you like him, you should just tell him," I said. "He's a great guy. You don't want someone else to snatch him up first. The SATs are almost over, so you'll be able to date him openly soon. You won't have to keep using those barbecue wings as an excuse to see him." "Who gave you the right to interfere in my life?" she hissed, her eyes blazing. "I just want you to be happy, Sarah," I replied softly. "Happy," she scoffed. "I think you just found a girlfriend and can't wait to throw me away." "What happened to you loving me?" she continued. "You sure moved on fast." I was stunned. I never expected her to take it that way. "You never liked me back, Sarah. Why should I keep wasting my life waiting for someone who doesn't want me?" I snapped back at her. "Fine," she said coldly. "Don't bother me then." Your desperation was starting to smell anyway. She slammed the door on her way out. I bit my lip until it bled, making a silent vow to myself. "Sarah Miller, I am done with you for good." I didn't say a single word to her for the rest of the week. My father assumed we were just stressed about our upcoming exams, so he didn't ask questions. That weekend, Lizuri and I met up at the library to study. She was much sharper than I was and constantly helped me through the tough sections. Whenever she got too stressed, I'd take her for a ride on my motorcycle to clear her head. Thinking about having a lifelong friend like her made me actually look forward to the future for once. Maybe it was the extra effort, but my rank jumped up by 15 spots on the next practice exam. My dad was so thrilled after talking to my teacher that he couldn't stop grinning. Sarah was making coffee in the kitchen and gave me a sideways look. "Impressive," she muttered. "I guess your little romance isn't hurting your grades." "Right back at you," I countered. "Seems like your secret crush hasn't stopped you from being number one either." I left her standing there with a sour expression and went back to my room. We were down to the final month before the SATs. I had never been more focused in my life. My brain was a machine fueled by equations and vocabulary lists. I didn't have a second to spare for romance. June arrived with a blistering heat wave, and with it, the exams. I felt prepared this time, and as I filled out the bubbles, I knew I was doing well. I even tackled the final bonus math question that I used to leave blank. I wasn't sure if I got it right, but I at least had a solid strategy on the paper. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the test. It also signaled the end of my life as a high school student. As I walked out of the building, I saw Henry and Sarah huddled together. She looked stressed, likely worrying about a few tough questions, and they were comparing their answers. Love really does change people. Sarah had more patience with Henry Davis than I had ever seen her show anyone else. I walked right past them and headed straight for Leo and Lizuri. We had plans to hit the amusement park and the arcades to celebrate finally being free. While waiting for the results, I spent every waking moment out with my friends, and my dad finally stopped breathing down my neck. Surprisingly, Sarah started calling me every single day, asking when I was coming back. Whenever I stayed out late to drop Lizuri off, Sarah would have some snide remark waiting for me when I got back. Tonight was my 18th birthday. It was well past midnight when I finally got home, feeling a bit buzzed as Leesery walked me to my door. When we reached the entrance, she stopped me. "Morrison," she said softly, "what if I promise to spend every birthday with you from now on?" It was too dark to see her face clearly, so I just assumed she was talking about our lifelong friendship. "Du, he left. You're my best friend, Leesery." I gave her a heavy pat on the back, making her cough. She looked away, hiding a flicker of disappointment. "Geez, watch the strength, Morrison. You almost killed your best friend." We both started laughing, but then the door opened. It was Sarah, out to take the trash to the curb. She glared at us with pure resentment. "It's midnight, Morrison," she snapped. "Why aren't you inside?" "Better get going," Leesery whispered with a smirk. "Your little first love is calling for you." She waved goodbye and reminded me to drink some water before bed. Sarah didn't stop nagging the entire way up in the elevator. I had never realized how much of a busybody she could be. "Will you get a rest?" "I'm right here, aren't I?" She stiffened, her voice turning sharp. "I'm annoying? You promised me you'd be back by 10. If something happened to you, how was I supposed to face your father?" she demanded. "It was my birthday," I argued, "and I was with Leesery. I was perfectly safe. Besides, even if I didn't come home, I have places to stay." Sarah's eyes widened. "In the middle of the night? Where exactly were you planning on going with her?" "Even if you were dating, you can't just be that reckless," she said, her voice trembling with anger. She looked like she was about to snap. I looked at her, genuinely confused. "Why are you being so aggressive?" She immediately looked away and fell silent. Once we were inside, and I was getting a glass of water, she spoke up in a small voice. "It was your birthday. Why didn't you invite me?" "Oh, I forgot," I said. I hadn't actually forgotten. I just didn't want her there to ruin the mood. Sarah looked down, looking genuinely hurt for a second before she went to the fridge to get me some honey. A moment later, she handed me a small blue box. "Happy birthday," she said. "Thanks," I replied. I finished my water, but I had absolutely no interest in seeing what was inside the box. She hovered there for a moment as if she wanted to say something else, but eventually just retreated to her room. I didn't expect much. In the past, she usually just gave me some cheap anime trading cards she found for free online. I still had a row of those worthless cards sitting on my nightstand. Reluctantly, I opened the blue box and froze in surprise. Inside was a handmade crochet doll of a little boy with a backpack. It looked exactly like I did when I was 6 years old. The craftsmanship was clearly that of a beginner, with a few visible holes in the stitching. I couldn't believe she had actually made this by hand. That was a first. When the SAT results were released, my father sat with us as we logged in. Sarah, predictably, crushed it with a near-perfect score. When I saw my score of 622, I almost cried with relief. "This is amazing," my dad shouted. "I'm so proud of both of you." My father's eyes were misty as he ruffled my hair and promised us a steak dinner. He took a screenshot of our scores and posted them on Facebook immediately to brag to his friends. "So, have you decided where you're applying?" he asked. "I'm staying local and going to UCLA," I said. "I want to be close to home. Leo and Leesery are staying in California too," I added. "That's perfect," my dad beamed. "I won't have to worry about you being all alone across the country." In my first life, my grades were trash, so I settled for an engineering degree I hated. This time, I was going to fulfill my dream of becoming a doctor. My mother passed away when I was little because of a misdiagnosis, and I wanted to make sure other families didn't have to go through that. Sarah didn't seem surprised by her score at all. Henry probably did just as well, which meant they could go to Harvard together. "That's great," I muttered. While my dad was on the phone, Sarah leaned over and whispered, "Are you staying here just because of Leesery?" "Do you really like her that much?" she asked. "What's it to you?" I snapped. I was getting sick of her constant questioning. Sarah looked at me with an intensity one hadn't seen before. "Morrison, if you want me to, I can stay here in California with you." "There's no point," I said. "You have the grades for the Ivy League. Staying here would be a waste of your potential. You belong at Harvard. Henry will probably be there too, so you won't be alone," I added. "I didn't give him the letter," she said quietly. "Oh, it was all I managed." My phone started buzzing with a call from Leesery. As I reached for it, Sarah grabbed my wrist, her face clouded with anger. "Do you really not care at all?" she demanded. "About what?" "You," I retorted. "Weren't you the one who told me not to be so desperate and that I was stinking up the place?" She went white as a sheet when I threw her own words back at her. I shook her hand off and walked out to the balcony to answer the phone. Lizary's parents were both based in California, so she had decided to stay local too, and we ended up picking the same school. "Awesome," she laughed over the phone. "We can keep riding that bike of yours all through college." From that day on, I stopped keeping tabs on Sarah. Whether she chose to go after Henry Davis was none of my business anymore. The summer flew by as I spent every day with Lizary. We even went to driving school together and got our licenses on the same day. We both ended up with deep summer tans. When Sarah's acceptance letter from Harvard arrived, she didn't even tell me. She just packed her bags and left for Boston in a huff. Life as a pre-med student was brutal. I spent my life trapped between the library and the lab, and even finding time for a quick lunch with Lizary took a week of planning. During finals week, I stared at a textbook the size of cinder block and felt like breaking down. Lizary noticed I was losing weight and started bringing me home-cooked meals while we studied together. "How are you so calm?" I asked her one night. "Don't you have to study?" She just shrugged and tapped her temple. "It's all up here." I was so jealous of her photographic memory. Because she was always around, people in my program started gossiping and assuming she was the one chasing after me. I had a feeling she felt something more for me, too. But since she never made a move, I didn't want to risk our friendship by saying anything. We celebrated her birthday right after finals. Though my brain was still half stuck on a pathology question I was pretty sure I'd gotten wrong. Lizary smiled at the candles on her cake. "I don't really have any wishes," she said. "Why don't you make one for me, Morrison?" "Stop looking so stressed," she laughed. "I'll give you all my wishes from now on if it makes you feel better." I managed to smile and close my eyes. "I wish that I pass every single one of my classes. Please, universe, just this once." "There, the universe heard you," she said softly. She blew out the candles, her eyes fixed on me with a look of pure affection. I didn't see Sarah again until summer break. She was pre-law now and seemed to be constantly busy with debate team and student government stuff. We spent 2 weeks in the same house acting like total strangers. That changed on a Thursday night when Sarah came home late after a night out with her friends. I was drifting off when I heard someone stumbling at the door, followed by a loud crash against the hallway table. I went to investigate and found Sarah sitting on the floor, looking absolutely miserable. "Are you drunk?" I asked. I was about to go to the kitchen to get her some water when she reached out and grabbed my wrist. "Morrison, I saw Lizary today," she whispered. "She told me that you two aren't actually dating." "Oh," I said. My indifferent response seemed to infuriate her. She suddenly lunged forward and threw her arms around me, her eyes brimming with a mix of desperation and pain. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe that lie for so long?" she cried. "Was it fun for you? You have no idea how much I—" She trailed off, her eyes red and watery. Part of me still felt a twinge of pain for her, but mostly I just found the whole situation pathetic. "Sarah, I tried to tell you the truth back then," I said coldly. "You were the one who refused to listen. You don't get to play the victim now." She went silent, clearly remembering that day in the cafeteria. Seeing me with someone else had eaten away at her more than she was willing to admit. That feeling of jealousy had only grown stronger over the months. She wiped her eyes and looked up at me with raw vulnerability. "Morrison, I don't think I can let you go. Could you just go back to loving me?" she asked. I had spent years dreaming of her saying those words, but now that they were here, they meant nothing to me. "No, I can't," I said. "Why not?" She pleaded, her grip tightening on my arm. "Is it because of that letter?" "I was young and stupid," she stammered. "I didn't know the difference between admiration and real love. I don't love Henry Davis. I just felt like he was the only one who understood me." "Is that so?" I asked. "Because in all the years we were together, I never felt a shred of love from you. All I ever got was coldness." "Just give me one more chance," she begged. "We can start over. I'll make sure you feel it this time. Please, Morrison." She looked at me with desperate, drunken eyes, as if I were the only thing keeping her afloat. I tried to pull away, but she wouldn't let go. The more I pulled back, the more frantic she became. "Morrison, please, just love me again," she sobbed. She leaned in to kiss me, and I recoiled in disgust, shoving her away. She stumbled back and hit the hallway table with a loud thud that echoed through the quiet house. The shock of the impact seemed to clear her head. She slowly let her hands drop, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "Morrison, I'm so sorry." I couldn't listen to another word. I retreated to my room and locked the door. The next morning, I tried to act like nothing had happened, but Sarah kept looking at me with eyes full of regret. Leesery came by at noon to pick me up for a movie. She was wearing a sundress and looked absolutely stunning. She immediately noticed I was off. "What's up? Are you sick or just in a bad mood?" "I am fine," I lied. As I reached for my baseball cap, she grabbed my wrist. There were several deep scratches on my arm from the night before. It was obvious they were fingernail marks. "Who did this to you?" she asked, her future cop instincts kicking in immediately. "I just scratched it on something," I said. Leesery wasn't buying it for a second. She turned her gaze to Sarah, who was sitting on the sofa, and marched right over. "Did you do this?" Leesery demanded. "Yes, I did," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You little bitch." Leesery screamed, lunging at her. I barely managed to grab her around the waist to hold her back. Sarah finally snapped and lunged for Leesery's hair. It was a total disaster. I was screaming for them to stop, knowing my dad would lose his mind if he saw them brawling in the living room. "Enough! Stop it!" I yelled, finally pulling Leesery away. She had a few nasty scratches on her cheek. "You're going to be a cop, Leesery. Act like it," I scolded. Sarah didn't look much better. She was a disheveled mess. Leesery had been taking self-defense classes, and she knew exactly where to hit to leave a mark without showing a bruise. Sarah was hunched over, her face pale from the pain. Leesery finally went quiet under my glare. "The movie is starting," she muttered, looking hurt. "Let's just go." "Forget the movie," I said. "You're bleeding. Let's get you to a pharmacy." I dragged her out the door, completely ignoring Sarah as she sat there in pain. Sarah just watched us go and buried her face in her hands. At the pharmacy, I carefully cleaned Leesery's scratches while she winced in pain. "No more fighting," I told her. "You're training to protect people, not to get into street brawls. She hurt you, and you're still taking her side." She pouted, clearly still fuming. "I'm not taking her side. I'm looking out for you," I said. "If you get a record for assault, you can kiss your police career goodbye." Leesery went quiet, a small smile playing on her lips before she winced again. "Do you really care about me that much, Morrison?" "No," I lied. "Yes, you do," she grinned. After that blow-up, Sarah finally backed off and stopped being so confrontational. But paradoxically, she seemed to finally fall in love with me just as I was moving on. Every time she came home for the holidays, she would cook my favorite meals and buy me expensive, thoughtful gifts. She was there for every birthday and every Christmas. Whenever she flew back from Boston, she looked exhausted and sleep-deprived, and I just felt sorry that she was wasting so much effort on someone who didn't want her. All she seemed to care about was my happiness, though. On my 21st birthday, I was busy moving into an apartment near my clinical rotations. Leesery was interning at the LAPD and had been sent out on a field assignment, so she couldn't make it. Sarah took the opportunity to come over and cook a massive birthday dinner for me. I was distracted, constantly checking my iMessage for a text from Leesery. "What are you looking at?" Sarah asked. "Dinner's ready." "It's nothing," I replied. I couldn't stop worrying about Leesery. Was her assignment dangerous? What if something happened to her? "Morrison." Sarah's voice snapped me back to reality. Sarah looked miserable as she watched me. "Ever since I got here, you haven't stopped thinking about her, have you?" she asked. She was clearly hurt, but there was a sense of defeat in her voice. "I'm sorry," I said. "Morrison," she whispered. "When are you finally going to see me?" "Let's just eat," I said, ignoring the question. "The soup looks great." Sarah let out a long, weary sigh, looking like she had finally hit a wall. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't go back to the way I was. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed. "Leesery, open your window." I threw open the curtains and saw Leesery standing on the sidewalk, waving something that was glowing in the dark. I practically flew down the stairs to meet her. I thought you were stuck on assignment. I exclaimed. I was, she laughed. But I made a promise to someone that I'd never miss his birthday. I wasn't about to break it. She handed me a box containing a pair of sneakers I'd been wanting for months, along with a jar filled with glowing LED lights that looked like fireflies. Happy birthday, Morrison, she said. I saw those lights while I was out in the field and thought of you. Thank you, I said, my heart swelling. I looked at her, and the words were right on the tip of my tongue. Leesery, I think I... She seemed to know what was coming and quickly cut me off with a smile. Happy birthday, Morrison, she repeated firmly. I understood why she was hesitant. Her job with the LAPD was dangerous, and she didn't want to tie me down. I swallowed my confession and just smiled. Thanks. This is the best birthday ever. By the time Leesery started her full-time position, I was deep into my medical residency. By the time Leesery was promoted to sergeant, I was a surgical intern. The daily reality of life and death in the ER was starting to take a toll on my mental health. Then came the day I dreaded. A group of injured officers was rushed into the ER, and Leesery was one of them. She had been stabbed in the abdomen, her spleen was ruptured, and she had lost a terrifying amount of blood. My lead surgeon spent hours in the OR with her. When the light finally turned off, I rushed to her recovery room. She was deathly pale. She looked so fragile, as if she might slip away at any moment. I sat by her bed with tear-filled eyes, praying to any god who would listen for her to pull through. In the middle of the night, while I was studying neurosurgery notes by her bed, I saw her hand twitch. I looked up and found her eyes open, staring at me. Morrison, did you save me? She whispered. No, it was my mentor, I said, clutching her hand. I just stood by and watched. I went through my checks, asking about dizziness and pain while taking notes on her chart. Once I was sure she was stable, I finally let out a breath. You look so professional right now, she teased weakly. I gave her a small smile. Of course I do. I worked my ass off for this. Well then, I guess I'm in good hands with Dr. Harrison, she said. Don't say that, I replied. I just hope I never have to see you in my hospital ever again. She chuckled, her fingers brushing against mine for a second before she pulled back. A nurse came to get me for rounds, so I gave Leesery a few more instructions and hurried off. I was back in the daily grind of hospital life. Leesery was stuck in the hospital for a month, and the place was constantly filled with her fellow officers. Every time I did my rounds, they would give me these knowing looks, as if our relationship was the worst-kept secret in the department. But Leesery never said a word about it. Even on the day she was discharged, she kept things strictly professional, calling me Dr. Harrison in front of everyone. As I handed her the final discharge papers and her prescriptions, I decided to test the waters. Hey, Leesery, is there anything you want to say to me before you go? What? I'll take my meds, I promise, she said with a straight face. I just shook my head and laughed. Over the next few years, Leesery was constantly on the move, taking high-profile cases all over the country. There were weeks where I couldn't even get a text through to her. Sarah was as successful as ever. She joined a powerhouse law firm in San Francisco and became a partner within a few years, making a name for herself as a top-tier litigator. She was making a fortune and would occasionally send me bizarrely expensive gifts. Most of them sat unopened in boxes in my father's study because I was too busy to deal with them. My life was consumed by the hospital. Some days I didn't even have time for a granola bar. Sarah stopped by a few times, but I usually had to cut her off after 5 minutes to head back to surgery. She was incredibly persistent, though. She'd always find a way to message me or have gourmet meals delivered to the surgical lounge. Occasionally, she'd call me late at night after a few drinks, her voice slurred and desperate. Morrison, what do I have to do? Just tell me what I have to do to make you love me again. Just tell me, please, she'd sob. Why are you being so cruel? You were the one who loved me first. How could you just turn it off like that? I'm sorry for what I said back then. Can we just go back? Can't we just be what we were? Morrison, I miss you so much it hurts. Love doesn't just vanish overnight. She had a decade in our first life and all those years of our childhood to tell me she loved me, but she never did. She missed her chance, and it was better for both of us to just move on. It was time to look toward the future. Time moved quickly, and suddenly I was 32 years old. This was the year In my previous life, December of this year was when the elevator accident happened. I couldn't help but wonder if fate would find another way to kill me this time. A phone call snapped me out of my dark thoughts. It was Leesery, sounding as cheerful as ever. "Hey, Dr. Harrison, it's my birthday next week," she chirped. "What are you getting me?" "No idea," I teased. This girl was something else. She'd spent years dodging my hints, acting like we were just friends, even though everyone knew better. We were definitely more than friends, yet she still demanded birthday presents like a kid. She let out a playful snort on the other end of the line. "The department is promoting me to lieutenant," she said. "I won't have to travel for field assignments anymore. I'm finally settling down here in California for good." "Oh, and?" I asked, playing dumb. "So, I'm going to make a very special wish this year. Do you think it'll come true?" "I guess you'll have to wait and see," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was racing with excitement. Before we could finish our conversation, a nurse burst into the room. The hospital director was calling an emergency meeting for the entire surgical staff. I grabbed my tablet and ran to the conference room. A massive 8.0 magnitude earthquake had just hit a neighboring county, and they needed immediate medical reinforcements. That explained why I'd felt a bit dizzy earlier. It hadn't been my imagination. My name was on the first deployment list, so I packed my gear and headed out. When we arrived at the disaster zone, it looked like a war zone. People were screaming for help everywhere. My team didn't have a second to process the horror. We just dove straight into the triage work. The roads were blocked, and we were running dangerously low on supplies. I posted an urgent plea on Facebook, and Sarah messaged me within minutes, saying she'd handle the logistics for a massive donation of medical gear. "Thank you, Sarah." "Seriously," I messaged back. "How are you going to thank me?" she replied. "Is this the only time you're willing to talk to me now?" "I have to get back to surgery," I wrote. "Stay safe, Sarah. Let me know if you need anything." Late that night, as I was about to swap shifts, the ground started shaking violently again. "Get under the tables." "Now!" someone screamed. I tried to run, but the floor beneath me simply vanished. Huge chunks of debris and concrete rained down on me, and then everything went black as I lost consciousness. The aftershock hadn't been as big as the main quake, but it was enough to bring the remains of the building down on top of me. I was pinned under the rubble, unable to move even an inch. I don't know how much time passed, but my limbs started going numb. My throat was so dry from the dust that I couldn't even manage a whisper for help. The darkness reminded me of the elevator in my past life. I wondered if this was my destiny after all. Was I really supposed to die this year, no matter what? My phone lit up in my pocket. I could see Leesery's name on the screen, but I couldn't reach it. It was a cruel joke. Even with a second chance, I was going to die without telling her how I felt. My mind started to wander as my body heat faded. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a frantic voice from above. "Morrison! Morrison, where are you?" It felt like I'd been asleep for 100 years. When I finally opened my eyes, I was back in a familiar room in my own hospital. "Morrison, you're awake." Leesery was hovering over my bed, her eyes red and brimming with tears. "How do you feel? Does anything hurt?" I shook my head weakly. "What happened with the rescue? Are the other surgeons okay?" "Everyone's fine. They're all stable," she said, letting out a long breath as she squeezed my hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. "You've been out for 2 weeks, Morrison." "Thank God you're back," she whispered. She leaned down, and I felt her hot tears splashing onto my hand. "Was it you? Did you pull me out?" I asked. "Yeah," she sniffled. "I couldn't get a hold of you, so I volunteered my unit to join the rescue effort." "Thank you, Leesery," I said softly. "Don't thank me," she replied with a watery smile. "You saved me once, remember? We're even now." She called the doctor over to check my vitals, and then spent the rest of the afternoon feeding me soup 1 spoonful at a time, treating me like I was made of glass. I spent another week recovering, and Leesery never left my side for a second. On the day I was finally discharged, I realized it was her birthday. I decided that a confession like this needed to come from me first. While I was getting my things together, I enlisted some friends to help me set up a surprise. That evening, I waited for Leesery outside the hospital entrance. As she walked toward me, A shower of rose petals suddenly began to fall from the balcony above. Before she could even process what was happening, I dropped to one knee and pulled out a diamond ring that caught the evening light. Lizery, I love you, I said, my voice clear and steady. I've loved you since we were 17, but I was always too afraid that my feelings would get in the way of your career. But I don't want to wait another second. Lizery Sullivan, will you give me a chance? Will you marry me? A crowd of her fellow officers and my fellow surgeons had gathered around, cheering and throwing petals. She stood there, her face turning a deep crimson as tears flooded her eyes. For the first time in her life, she was completely speechless, but she nodded her head vigorously. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar figure standing in the shadows. It was Sarah Miller, standing at the very edge of the crowd. She was holding a thermos of soup and looked like she had rushed over straight from work. She went dead pale as she watched me put the ring on Lizery's finger. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Lizery laughed, pulling me up into a kiss. I slid the ring onto her finger, and it was a perfect fit. After 2 lifetimes, I finally had the answer I was looking for. Lizery held me so tight I could barely breathe as she sobbed with joy. Whoa, I've never seen the sergeant cry before, one of her officers whispered. You don't get it, man, his partner replied. That's real love right there. I'm actually jealous. Can I go back to high school and find someone like that? Later that night, my phone buzzed with an iMessage from Sarah. Are you really going to marry her? Morrison, I've been in your life longer than anyone. Why is it her and not me? Why won't you just give me one more look? I didn't reply. I simply deleted the message, blocked her number, and turned off my phone for the night. I pulled Lizery close and fell into the most peaceful sleep of my life. Sarah didn't show up to the wedding, but she sent a massive, incredibly expensive diamond as a gift. Lizery took one look at the diamond and rolled her eyes. She really just doesn't know when to quit, does she? She muttered. Lizery ended up having the diamond mounted on a leather collar for my dad Husky. A year into our marriage, Sarah was still single. Even after Lizery and I had our first daughter, Sarah remained alone. Even my father tried to set her up, pointing out that half the eligible bachelors in the city were dying to date her. She would just sit there sipping her drink, looking completely hollow. After a family dinner one night, she stood over our daughter's crib and bit her lip. She looks just like you, Morrison, she whispered. She does, I agreed. If only back then. She started. She didn't finish the sentence, letting it drift away into a heavy sigh. Lizery narrowed her eyes and gave her a warning look. Watch it, Lizery said firmly. He's my husband, legally and officially. Don't even think about it. Sarah gave a bitter laugh. It's only been a year. Life is long, and I'm a very good lawyer. Who knows? Maybe you'll get divorced one day. She was clearly eaten alive by jealousy. Why you? Lizery started, balling her hand into a fist, but she caught my eye and forced herself to calm down. Lizery was fuming the whole way home, looking like she wanted to pick a fight with a stop sign just to blow off steam. In the middle of the night, Lizery suddenly bolted upright in bed. Morrison, where exactly did you put our marriage license? Why are you asking now? I groaned. I want to hide it where that woman can never find it, she said. Go back to sleep, Lizery. I laughed. I tried to roll over and go back to sleep, but she was already out of bed, rummaging through the safe to find the perfect hiding spot. My name is Sarah Miller. From the moment I moved into the Harrison house, I knew that Morrison and I would never be equals. My father's friend was kind to me, but I knew if anything ever happened to Morrison, the blame would fall squarely on my shoulders. So I followed him everywhere like a shadow, making sure he stayed out of trouble. Everyone called me his future bride, and I never argued because that was exactly what I was. I hated the feeling of being a charity case, and by extension, I hated Morrison for being the one who made me feel that way. He was always clinging to me, wanting to do everything together. I couldn't say no to him, but inside, I was suffocating. To avoid looking like an ungrateful brat to his father, I forced myself to be nice to Morrison and keep him happy. As we grew older, he became incredibly handsome. I'd catch myself staring at him, and whenever he noticed, I'd immediately snap at him and call him arrogant to cover my tracks. I didn't want to love him. I didn't want to lose the tiny shred of dignity I had left. But then, During our junior year, he actually told me he loved me. I felt a surge of secret joy, though I forced myself to look bored. He looked crushed by my reaction, but by the next morning, he was back to following me around like a puppy. He got sick one day and complained about the bitter medicine, so he begged me to go get him some barbecue wings. That was the day I met Henry Davis. He had accidentally dropped a wing, and his father was screaming at him, calling him worthless. If I hadn't been standing there, I'm sure the man would have hit him. Seeing Henry's terrified expression, I realized we were exactly the same. After that, I used Morrison's cravings as an excuse to go to the shack and see him. I never head straight home. I'd sit in the corner of the shack for a while, feeling like I could finally breathe without someone watching me. It was the only time in my life where I didn't have to worry about Morrison or his father's feelings. We'd talk about our lives, and Henry would just sigh and keep working. He was like a weed growing through concrete. No matter how hard life got, he just kept going. I decided that Henry was the kind of guy I should be with, because he was the only one who truly understood me. I wrote him a letter, but I never had the courage to give it to him. Deep down, I knew my feelings for him weren't as strong as I pretended they were. Besides, it wouldn't have been fair to drag him into my mess. Then, Morrison started acting weird. It was like he was trying to push me away. I saw him laughing with Leesery Sullivan and assumed they were a couple. I couldn't believe he had spent years saying he loved me only to move on that fast. I told myself I was happy to finally be free of him, but I was actually furious. How could he just start looking at someone else? When I realized my letter was missing, I knew immediately it was him. I marched into his room to confront him, but he was so calm, as if my feelings for Henry didn't even matter to him anymore. It drove me insane. When it was time to pick colleges, I even told him I'd stay in state for him, but he didn't even blink. I was so hurt and angry that I chose Harvard just to get as far away as possible. The second I got to Boston, I regretted it. I wasn't there for him, but Leesery was. Morrison stopped looking for me, and on the rare occasions we did talk, all he could talk about was Leesery Sullivan. I hated it. I wanted the old Morrison back, the one who lived for my attention. But no matter what I did, he was gone. Years went by, and they still weren't officially dating. I thought I still had a shot, but Morrison was always too busy with the hospital to even give me the time of day. No matter what I bought him, he never gave me that warm smile I used to take for granted. I started to panic. When I heard he was trapped in that earthquake, I finally broke down. I realized I couldn't keep playing these games. I made his favorite soup and rushed to the hospital to tell him everything. But I was too late. The regret is suffocating. Leesery was right. I had an entire lifetime to choose Morrison, but I was too arrogant to do it. I'm the one who failed him. I'm the one who pushed him into her arms. Morrison, I hope you have the life you deserve. Every ounce of regret we feel comes from failing to respect the warmth we once took for granted. And true maturity is the painful art of finally letting go. Please remember that the most precious thing in your life isn't the one who got away. It is the person who stayed by your side when you were at your lowest and refused to leave.